friends. Hello, welcome to another video. I feel very professional today because I got a microphone and I put makeup on today. I never put on makeup because I feel like it's such a hassle, but I felt like it today and I felt very pretty. So, anyways, we are here to talk about books. But first, hi, I'm Mali. I am 23 years old now, a very avid reader, and I mainly talk about books and lifestyle in my content. And today we are doing a mega wrap up. It's been overdue. I haven't talked about the books that I read in February, and I had a very weird reading month in March. Like, it was so slow. I did read a couple of bangers, but there were a lot of misses. Let's get right into it. So, I have here a pretty big stack of books to talk about. So, in the month of February and March, I read about 10 physical books and 4 digital copies. Really excited to talk about this stack with you guys. But before I do, I did want to briefly mention my rating system, which is that I don't have any. I don't rate my books with stars. And the reason being is because I feel like stars are very personal to everybody. And I don't feel like stars completely like convey how I feel about the book. A book I rated 3 stars. A lot of people usually take that as like a bad rating, when I think the complete opposite. I think is a pretty good rating for a book. My best example is Bestiary. I rated this book 3 stars when I first read it, and it actually became one of my all-time favorites back in 2023. So I don't really use star ratings. I don't like them, but I will tell you if I like the book or not. So now that that's out of the way, the first book I read in February was People Collide by Isla McElroy. I read this for a reading vlog, and that was a really fun reading vlog to film and to read for. You guys can head over to that vlog if you want to see like more like first thoughts type of thing. But this book, I read you guys a synopsis. When Ellie leaves the cramped Bulgarian apartment he shares with Elizabeth, his more organized and successful wife, he discovers that he now inhabits her body. Not only have he and his wife traded bodies, but Elizabeth, living as Ellie, has disappeared without a trace. What follows is Eli's search across Europe and to America for his missing wife, and a roving, no-holds-barred exploration of gender and embodied experience. As Eli comes closer to finding Elizabeth while learning to exist in her body, he begins to wonder what effect this metamorphosis will have on their relationship and how long he can maintain the illusion of living as someone he isn't. Will their new marriage wither completely? Or is this transformation the very thing Eli and Elizabeth need for their marriage to thrive? Oh, you guys see this little notebook? That means this is my reading notes notebook. And I will refer to this. This was a gender bend type of story. My first experience with this type of story. Also super interesting to note, Isla McElroy is a binary author. I enjoyed this one a whole lot. I remember it was super easy to get into and to read. I really liked Eli and Elizabeth's dynamics in their relationship. I really like that Elizabeth was the more successful one, the more put together one, whereas Eli was the sloppy one, the lazy one. I just like that flip of dynamics because I feel like it's usually the man who's more successful and it's the woman who's kind of lost in life. I also did like what this book had to say about gendered experiences. There is a part where Elizabeth, she talks about her very different experience living in a man's body versus a woman's body, and how she feels a much more freedom to explore. I really like that, what it had to say, but ultimately I am struggling to remember the ending, and I don't think I can say anything about the ending without spoiling it. But yeah, really good. And if you think the gender bend aspect is something that's interesting to you guys, I really do implore you guys to pick this one up. The next book I read was Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan, and the synopsis says, it's 1990 in London, and Tom Hargreaves has it a burgeoning career as a reporter, fierce ambition, and a brisk disregard for the peasants. Ordinary people, his readers, easy tabloid fodder. His star seems set to rise when he stumbles across a sensational dead child on a London estate, grieving parents beloved across the neighborhood, and the finger of suspicion pointing at one reclusive family of Irish immigrants and bad apples, the Greens. Okay, so Ordinary Human Failings was a fail. It was so bad. I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm really, really mad at myself for not liking this one when it sounded perfect on paper. It's literally about this reporter named Tom who gets wind of this story of a child who has died, and the suspect is the 10-year-old daughter of the Green family. Now, people in the neighborhood don't like the Green family. They think they're kind of weird and they just don't like them because they're Irish immigrants. So, Tom ultimately gets to know the family and starts interviewing them and starts to understand how it is that they got to Britain and how their life was before and how it is that they let this happen. So, on paper, this sounded like a very interesting book on family dynamics, and that's usually my jam. Like, I love that. Like, that's my bread and butter. But there was something about the writing style that didn't feel like Megan Nolan's debut, Acts of Desperation. Okay, so in my notes I wrote, the plot was buried under the intense focus Nolan placed on the characters, which is not usually a problem for me, but I was under the impression that I will get more plot than we actually got. That's really interesting that I felt that because I usually love character driven stories and I don't mind when there's little plot, but the way the synopsis is set up and the story is set up, I thought we'll get a lot more plot, and it focused a lot more on a character's backstory than I originally wanted. It was also something about the writing. I just remember feeling very, very distracted the entire time I was reading this. And I don't know why. Maybe I was just not in a mood for it at the time. Very disappointed with that one at the end of it. But maybe I'll give it another try some other time. The next book I read in February was Pitch Pit. This is edited by Molly Llewellyn and Crystal Buckley. Molly Llewellyn is a friend of mine on Instagram, and she's really, really cool. I was so stoked when she announced that she was publishing this. This is an anthology of fierce and dangerous women. This anthology also features short stories by authors like Sarah Rose Ether, Kei-Min Chang, Chantal V. Johnson, Lauren Groff is also in this one. Those are ones that I was personally really excited, but there's a whole lot of other authors that I will write down here. To give you guys a feel about this anthology, the first story is called Fuckboy Museum by Disha Filia. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say your name. But this anthology features a young girl who begins killing her dates and stuffs them in her freezer. It's written by a Black author. I really enjoyed Kei-Min Chang's short story in this one as well because it was about this young girl who fell in love with a scam artist through the telephone. I don't know. Kei-Min Chang, I don't know. I love her. It was also really cool to discover new artists with this anthology collection. I discovered Vanessa Shang with her Maps short story. It was pretty gruesome. Honestly, Vanessa Chang reminded me a lot of Kei-Min Chang's own writing style and prose. I ultimately enjoyed a lot of short stories in this one, but I think it's customary of many short story collections to not enjoy others as much. So there's definitely some hits in here for me, but overall, a very, very good collection. I am super excited for Molly's next one. With tagline for her next anthology collection is "Be Gay, Do Crime," so that should be something. Then I finally read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. The back says, Alex Chamberlain is a woman who gets what she wants and has made a living showing other women how to do the same. So she's shocked when her babysitter, Emira Tucker, is confronted while watching the Chamberlains toddler one night in the aisles of their high-end supermarket. The store's security guard, seeing a young black woman out late with a white child, accuses Amira of kidnapping. A small crowd gathers. A bystander films everything, and Amira is furious and humiliated. Alex resolves to make things right. But Amira herself is aimless, broke, and wary of Alex's desire to help. At 25, she is about to lose her health insurance and has no idea what to do with her life. When the video of Amira unearths someone from Alex's past, both women find themselves in a crash course that will upend everything they think they know about themselves and each other. I really enjoyed this one. I can't believe I had this sitting on my shelves for a good 2 years. This book is still honestly very permanent in today's climate. I read this for Black History Month. I was just looking at my shelf, seeing what book I had that fit the prompt. Really enjoyed the writing style. It felt like a little breather from the very heavy literature fiction books I've been reading the past couple of weeks before. Yeah, just very readable. I really like the sprinkle of romance at the beginning of it, even though he turned out to be awful. Maybe spoiler, I don't know. The characters were very caricatures, and they're exaggerated a little bit, but not in a super cringy way. I thought it was done very well. It made it a little bit predictable, but that did not take away from how much I enjoyed this one at all. This book was really fun. So yeah, that was such a fun age. My next read was The Adult by Bronwyn Fisher. The synopsis says 18-year-old Natalie has just arrived for her first year of university in Toronto, leaving her remote, forested hometown for an unfamiliar city. Everyone she encounters seems to know exactly who they are. Chatty, confident Clara from down the hall who wants to be her friend. Intense, determined Rachel from her poetry class who is going to be a writer. Natalie doesn't know what she wants. She reads advice listicles and watches videos online and thinks about how to fit in, how to really become someone. Just as she is trying to find her footing, she meets Nora, an older woman who takes an unexpected interest in her. Natalie is drawn magnetically into Nora's orbit. She begins spending more and more of her time off campus at Nora's home, enveloped by the intensity of her feelings and the version of adulthood she imagines Nora leads. Worried about how her floor mates will react to news of her relationship with a woman, Natalie explains her absence by inventing a secret boyfriend named Paul. But when it becomes clear that Nora is lying too, her secrets begin to take an alarming shape in Natalie's life, even as Natalie tries to look away. What or who is Nora hiding? I want to say that I remember this one more than I actually do, and the answer is that I really don't. This is a very no plot, just vibes type of book, a very soft and tender coming of age. That being said though, the writing is absolutely gorgeous. It's clear that Fisher is a poet herself or something. I remember reflecting on my own experience and feelings during my first year of university. I also remember feeling a lot like the main character did, just very lost and unsure of herself, was very shy, was just trying to make friends with my classmates and sort of failing. I will be on the lookout for anything else Bronwyn Fisher does. He is someone that will create beautiful things. Next book I read in the month of February, which was also another Black History Month prompt, was The Mermaid of Black, Conch by Monique Rafi. I love this book so much. Before I keep gushing about it, I'm going to read you guys a synopsis. In 1976, David is fishing off the island of Black Conch when he comes upon a creature he doesn't expect, a mermaid by the name of Ikaya. Once a beautiful young woman, she was cursed by Yellow's wives to live in this form for the rest of her days. But after the mermaid is caught by American tourists, David rescues and hides her away in his home, finding that once out of the water, she begins to transform back into a woman. Now David must work to win Ikaya's trust, while she relearns what it is to be human, navigating not only her new body, but also her relationship with others on the island. A difficult task after centuries of loneliness. As David and Ikaya grow to love each other, they juggle both the joys and the dangers of life on shore. but a lingering question remains. Will the former mermaid be able to escape her curse? So what do you even say about this book besides that I just fucking love this? Like the year is not over and I know this is gonna be like my favorite book of 2024. It is a Caribbean love story. It was very, very close to my heart. This is written in Caribbean English, not a whole lot of it. It's not difficult to follow through or anything like that, but when the characters talk, it's written in Caribbean English or bad English. But you guys don't know, I am Puerto Rican. I'm also half Asian because of my father. He was born in Haiti. And I can't tell you how fucking cool it was to hear my dad's slang in this book. Like I just, it's English that I heard growing up because of him. There's also old Taino legends in this. There's Taino word and culture. I need to read more Caribbean literature because it felt like this was a little piece of my heritage, little piece of me in this book. It felt so special. I absolutely adored the characters in this novel. The writing was so magical and just as enchanting as The Mermaid. This book also has a lot to say about colonialism, greed, power, love, friendship. Got into a little bit of like, not a slump, but I've been looking for a book that made me feel like this did, and I have not found it. If you guys know about any other Caribbean literature that I should add to my TBR, please let me know. I really enjoyed this one, especially if it has some type of magical realism embedded in the story. I just really, really love this, and I hope people pick it up. Also, this cover is gorgeous. If you need any other incentive to pick it up, look at this. Imagine this in your shelves, you guys. I also read The Summer That Melted Everything. This was also another book that I liked quite a lot. Saul seems to appear out of nowhere, a bruised and tattered 13-year-old boy claiming to be the devil himself, answering an invitation. Fielding Bliss, the son of a local prosecutor, brings Saul home, where the Bliss family welcomes him, assuming he's a runaway from a nearby farm town. When word spreads that the devil has come to Breath Ed, not everyone is happy to welcome the self-proclaimed fallen angel. Murmurs follow him and tensions rise, along with the temperature, as an unbearable heat wave rolls into town right along with him. As strange accidents start to occur, some in the town, riled by the feverish heat, start to believe that Saul is exactly who he claims to be. While members of the Bliss family wrestle with their own personal demons, a fanatic drives the town to the brink of a catastrophe that will change the sleepy Ohio backwater forever. So this is just as intense as the synopsis sounds. I also read this as part of a reading vlog, and you guys can head over there to see footage of me crying at this book. So Fielding is our narrator, and we go back and forth between the past and the present. In present time, Fielding is an older gentleman. He is lonely, bitter, and hasn't been able to let go of the past. And in the past, we follow Fielding as he is a 13-year-old boy who meets Saul, and he begins to love Saul as a brother. Saul integrates quite nicely in Fielding's family, and the family raises Saul as one of their own. This is a story about family and brotherhood, and ultimately that same family comes apart by their own secret. From the very beginning, the town doesn't really like Saul, not because he claims to be the devil, but because he is black. And a tragedy happens towards the end involving Saul and the town. And this story is ultimately also one about hate and what hate does to people. Yeah, this was heartbreaking. I literally cried, you guys. Tiffany McDaniel, oh my god, does she know how to write? It makes you feel like you are part of the family as well. And so when the devastating things start to happen, I felt like I was losing one of my own. I am surprised that I don't hear more about her debut novel. It's really, really good. Like in my own personal ranking, I will rank this one first, then On the Savage Side, and then Betty. Very, very good in terms of how she made you so emotionally invested in this family, and then how she completely took out all hopes and dreams that you had and crumbled them and crushed them. Read this if you want to be emotionally devastated. Okay, the last book that we read in February was Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. I read the bookstagram Darling and I hated this one. Exiled from the art world and on sabbatical from her dead-end bar job, Irina obsessively takes explicit photographs of average-looking men she persuades to model for her, scouted from the streets of Newcastle. But her talent has not gone unnoticed, and Irina is invited to display her work at a fashionable London gallery. It is a chance to revive her career and escape from the rut of drugs, alcohol, and extreme cinema she's fallen into. Yet the news instead triggers a self-destructive tailspin, centered around Irina's consuming relationship with her best friend and a shy young man from her local supermarket who has attracted her attention. So I have a bone to pick with everybody who said this was good. Let's start with Irina. She was such an annoying fucking character. Like, I know when a character is unlikable and I know how to like an unlikable characters, but this was not it. Anybody who said that this is a female empowerment type of book, like yes, woman's wrong. I support woman's wrong, but there's a line and this book crossed the line and I don't know how we're supposed to root for the character or just root for the messaging in this book. What Eliza Clark tried to do with this book was she was trying to flip the gender gap and flip the male perspective, the male gaze or whatever, and make it as so the perpetrator was a woman and somehow that was female empowerment. I don't know how. Basically, Irina flat out rapes multiple people. That's glossed over, completely glossed over. No one mentions it in any review. No one says that as a trigger warning either. Just because Irina forgoes consent with her models and rapes them is not female empowerment. Like, it's not doing anything to flip in the male gaze. Like, Irina is just as bad as these male photographers and these men she claims are worse than her. And we're supposed to root for her? I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, I was really reading this and I was so perplexed. I was literally like checking the cover, checking the title, checking to making sure I was reading the same book everyone else is reading because this was not the book. The book left such a bad taste in my mouth. Ugh. Okay, now what's left is all the books that I read in March. I have two library books to talk about. March is really slow reading month. The first book I read was Evil Eye by Ataf Room. Really enjoyed this one. This book follows a young Palestinian woman, and with everything that's going in Palestine right now, I really wanted to make sure that I got to reading this one soon rather than later. And I'm really glad I did. Yara Murad has worked hard to outrun the demons in her tumultuous childhood in Brooklyn. Now ensconced in suburban North Carolina, Yara has achieved everything she aspired to. She is highly educated and teaching art at a local college. She's also raising two precocious daughters with her successful husband and has the kind of freedom her own mother had only dreamed of. So why doesn't he feel that way most days? Why does Yara experience flashes of anger out of nowhere or sadness she can't name? When an incident at the college threatens Yara's job and peace of mind, her mother suggests that a family curse could be to blame. While Yara doesn't believe in all superstitions, she wonders if an evil eye may be at work. Shaken to her core, Yara finds her carefully constructed world beginning to implode. To save herself, Yara must finally confront the childhood she thought she left behind and forge her own path forward. The way this book shined for me was its way of handling mental illness and that talk of having a therapist, healing yourself, and wanting to better yourself. I thought it handled it in such a tender and soft way. I also really love the platonic friendship in this between Jara and this guy's name I forgot. Absolutely adored Tav Room's writing. I couldn't stop reading this. I took my time with it as well because I was really enjoying this one. This honestly made me quite emotional at times. I like picking up contemporary fiction every once in a while because I feel like it's a little more readable than literary fiction, just in terms of how easier it is to digest the themes it explores. If you have been thinking about this one, I think you should pick it up. Also, the cover is gorgeous once again. The next book I read was Sharks in the Time of Saviors by Kauai Strong Washburn. In 1995, Kailua Kona, Hawaii, on a rare family vacation, 7-year-old Nainoa Flores falls overboard a cruise ship into the Pacific Ocean. When a shiver of sharks appears in the water, everyone fears for the worst. But instead, Noah is gingerly delivered to his mother in the jaws of a shark, marking his story as the stuff of legends. Nainoa's family, struggling amidst the collapse of the sugarcane industry, hails his rescue as a sign of favor from ancient Hawaii gods, a belief that appears validated after he exhibits puzzling new abilities. But as time passes, this supposed divine favor begins to drive the family apart. Nainoa, working now as a paramedic on the streets of Portland, struggles to fathom the full measure of his expanding abilities. Further north in Washington, his older brother Dean hurtles into the world of elite college athletics, obsessed with wealth and fame, while in California, risk-obsessed younger sister Kaui, I really don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry. I went the entire novel not knowing how to say this girl's name. Navigates an unforgiving academic workload in an attempt to forge her independence from the family's legacy. I'm trying to be gentle and not be so harsh, but I hated this one. Honestly, it disappointed me. I was expecting to like it a lot better than I did. I originally picked this up because it sounded similar to the Mermaid of Black conch. It sounded like it had magical realism. It sounded like it was set not exactly like it's not in the Caribbean, but it has that deep culture embedded in the island type of story. It had to do with family dynamics. It had to do about sibling dynamics as well, which I usually like. But I found the characters to be kind of underdeveloped and sort of annoying. I didn't really enjoy any of the POVs of any of the family. The most interesting character of them all was Nainoa and his abilities and the amount of pressure he felt on top of him because of all the expectations from his family, especially his mother, because of his abilities. That really doesn't go anywhere. His character doesn't really go anywhere. The spiritual powers that he has, I felt like maybe it was just me missing this part because I am not too familiar. I'm not familiar at all with any of Hawaii's legends or myths or anything like that. So maybe it was my fault that I did not understand this bit. But I felt like Nainoa's spiritual magical powers were not very explained at all or explored in any way that was satisfying. It just like fizzled out. I was really disappointed with this one. I really wanted to love it a lot more than I did, but I really didn't. I struggled to read this one. The next book I read was Her Body and Other Parties. Wow, look at how they shine. Wow. Her Body and Other Parties by Gabriel Maria Machado is a short story collection by her. This was a very, very strong short story collection. I really enjoyed this one. Yeah, this was really good. This focused a lot on women experiences, women's bodies. It had every single genre imaginable. It had a little bit of comedy, it had a little bit of like sci-fi. My favorites were My favorites were The Husband's Dish, where this girl who has a ribbon tied around her neck and she has lived with that her entire life. And she grows up, she gets married, she has kids, but all throughout her life, her husband has been very curious about her ribbon around her neck and he wants to touch it, he wants to know what's under there. And she's always like, no, 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 you can't touch it, that's just for me, and ultimately the husband gets his way. The next short story that I really enjoyed in this one was Inventory. This one had a little bit of a sci-fi kick that I really liked, a little of like apocalyptic world, and the way the story is told is through the woman's like sexual relations throughout the years. Can say confidently that none of these were misses. Maybe some of them I didn't enjoy as much, but there was none any that I just like DNF'd or anything. Like there was not one that I openly hated so much or just didn't finish. Because I'm gonna be honest, if there's a short story in a collection that I don't like, I will just skip it. and there were none in here that I skipped. So yeah, really, really good. Next book I read in March was Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I finally read all that 500 pages of just emotional torture. A girl comes of age against the knife. So begins the story of Betty Carpenter. Born in a bathtub in 1954 to a white mother and Cherokee father, Betty is the sixth of 8 siblings. The world they inhabit in the rural town of Breath Ed, Ohio, is one of poverty and violence, both from outside the family and devastatingly from within. But despite the hardships she faces, Betty is resilient. Her curiosity about the natural world, her fierce love for her sisters, and her father's brilliant stories are kindling for the fire of her own imagination and in the face of all to which she bears witness. So, in true McDaniel fashion, that was devastating. So, Betty and her siblings are mixed, but it is Betty in particular who is the darkest of them all. She looks a lot like her father, who is 100% Cherokee Indian, and she gets a lot of bullying because of that, not only from outside of the family, but also from inside the family. Honestly, the mother pissed me off so much in this novel. Betty uses her imagination a lot to escape the harsh realities of her life. It's also thanks to her father that she gains that ability to tell stories and who she gains such appreciation for writing. This is a very interesting family dynamic type of story. That being said, though, I did feel like this was Tiffany McDaniel's weakest novel. That's not to say that I did not enjoy this one. I feel like if you are first getting into McDaniel's work, maybe you'll find its pacing a little bit slow. For a lot, what kept me reading was the writing style. Personally, for me, I didn't feel emotionally devastated by this one as her other books. Like, yes, some fucked up things happen in this one, but the way I was talking about this, I thought it would be a whole lot worse, and it wasn't, which feels bad for me to say, but On the Savage Side was on another level. Like, that had me dragged through the mud. But yeah, I did enjoy this one. I don't want you guys to think that I did not. I just expected a much more visceral reaction to this book, and I didn't have that. I didn't even cry during this one, which I expected to. And I think I wanted to cry, which is why I'm ranking this one low. But yeah, that was Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I am glad I read this. I'm glad I conquered this one. 500 pages. It literally took me over a week to read. Okay, now the very last book that I read in March was Monstrillo by Geraldo Samano Cordova. The synopsis says, grieving Magos cuts out a piece of her deceased 11-year-old son Santiago's lung. Acting on fierce maternal instinct and the dubious logic of an old folktale, she nurtures the lung until it gains sentience, growing into the carnivorous little Monstrillo she keeps hidden within the walls of her family's decaying Mexico City estate. Eventually, Monstrillo begins to resemble the Santiago he once was, but his innate impulses, though curbed by his barrical and chosen family's communal care, threaten to destroy the fragile second chance at life. I really enjoyed this one. This was a very stunning book about grief and love and acceptance. I also really like the usage of multiple POVs in this one. We got multiple POVs of Magos, the mother, Joseph, the husband, Lena, who was a friend of both the husband and the mother, and of Santiago himself, or Monstrillo. While we got multiple POVs, I liked that it actually moved the plot along, and we didn't get like the same event hashed out just by different perspectives. I also liked how queer everyone was. The mother was queer, the best friend was queer, the husband was queer, Monstrillo was queer. I love that. I love that. Yeah, it was really fun. Kind of grisly at times, but it was ultimately just a very, very beautiful story on love. So that is all the books that I've read in February and March. I hope you guys enjoyed this little wrap up and that the microphone worked out. I'm curious what books you guys read in March and February, if there were any standouts in those 2 months. I'm also curious to know how you guys feel about your reading so far this year. And yeah, just talk to me about books, you guys. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.